the President of Suva Principals Association, the executive members of Suva Principals Association, President and members of Nosori Principals Association, the executives of Head Teachers Association, the heads of schools, the vice principals, assistant vice principals, the media officials, including the officials from Ministry of Education. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to talk to you today on various things that's being done at the Ministry of Education. But first of all, thank you very much for being here despite the bad weather. And we had such a chaos when we came out of the office. The traffic jam was unbelievable. You wouldn't believe how many shortcuts we had to look for before we managed to reach here. But we did it. Although we left the office before time, but it was the traffic that held us up. But I do apologize for this delay, but thank you very much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I strongly believe in consultation. That's why we're having this session today. And consultation is not only when we have such discussion with, say, politicians or with certain elite groups in our society. Consultation can be at any level. And for the last so many months, I have visited more than 100 schools. I know what is happening in schools. I've met the teachers, I've met the parents, I've met the students, and I've also met the school management committees. I have read a number of reports that came out, including the Education Commission Report 2000, even the past reports that were produced, or when the SDG goals were being measured, or MDG goals were being measured in the education sector. I've read it all. And besides that, you all know that I was a teacher, and then I became a teacher trainer. So I have returned to this field after a very long time. Having I have done many things, worked in the private sector as well, state bodies and so forth. So coming back to the education system, I personally felt there is a need to change the system so that the education in Fiji can move with time. We cannot be doing what we have been doing for last 30 years. During that time, what we did was excellent. That was the best fit. Because during that time, we didn't even have television. Later on, television came. We didn't have Facebook, we didn't have social media. We didn't have various apps that we can use in today's teaching and learning. We didn't have anything of that nature. So in that situation, and of course don't forget that we didn't even have child protection law that you need to abide by. So the time was different. Parents were different. Parenting was different. The societal expectation was different. But all that has changed over a period of time. Now we live in 21st century. And 21st century demands that our children should be able to fit into this era. Otherwise, they'll be a misfit. And 21st century is all about technology, it's all about health. With the COVID-19 now, it's about climate change. And at international level, there is a lot of discussion around technology and education, climate change. How do you introduce climate change for behavioral change? Right, not climate change education, because we know how climate change occurs. Not from that perspective, but how do we change our behavior so that we can assist in mitigating climate change? So how do we deliver our education in that area? So ladies and gentlemen, considering what is happening globally, considering what the various reports are saying, also considering the kind of workforce or citizens we need in Fiji, we have to look at the whole education sector. And generally when I visit schools, teachers always say that education is so critical, it is so important, because it's the children who go through the education system, they become lawyers, they become doctors, they become journalists, or they join any profession they like. But it is through this education system which forms the foundation for the growth. But again, if our foundation is not strong enough, it's going to be wobbly. And when the foundation is wobbly, then the contribution is not straight in the nation development or in improving your quality of life or simply being a good citizen. So it's extremely important that we need to go back and relook at the education system and say, okay, what are some of the things we can do? So in terms of the reforms, we started off, before I talk about the reform, you all know what quality education is. Quality education requires a couple of things. It requires good curriculum. It requires good teachers. It requires good infrastructure. It also requires good teaching and learning materials. In other words, you need to create that ambience within the school system where children would like to come. They want to be part of the education system. And that can only happen if we have the right curriculum, the right teachers, the right infrastructure, and the teaching and learning resources. So we have focused our reform in all these 4 areas. But our major focus right now is building a strong foundation, which is at primary level. Most of the teachers at secondary level, you've been complaining that when the children reach secondary level, they're not creative thinkers, they're not innovators, they're not able, some of them are not able to read properly or write properly, right? This is what I'm hearing. And even the school that I visited yesterday, which was Talanoa North College, we had an open forum, and the teacher did mention that it seems that we need to have more session with the teachers on numeracy and literacy, and so forth. So there was a very wide discussion that we had. But just to share some of the things that we are doing, we are first of all looking at ECE sector. ECE sector is very important, and we need to create and review some of the policies that we have. But we need to create standards for ECE. So any person who is offering ECE education, whether it's an institution or individual as a private business, they need to comply with these standards. And UNICEF is helping us in this area. UNICEF is known for the ECE sector. They have got people who are expertise. They have that level of expertise in this area. So they're helping Ministry of Education to develop policies, processes, as well as standards. And the work is progressing very well, I must say. The second area that we have looked at is, of course, numeracy and literacy. We have been assisted by DFAT, and there has been a lot of consultation with the teachers, and we have now rolled out numeracy and literacy as a trial in 90 schools. We have also created champions in schools. We have, in fact, involved the heads of schools as well, so that they understand the importance of literacy and numeracy and how it should be delivered. Because we do not wish to deliver that subject the same way as what it was done in the past. It requires different strategies. And for the first time, we have also prepared some added information for the parents, because parents are very keen when the children are young, from ECE to Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, when they're in primary school. They show a lot of interest. So how can we guide the parents in teaching numeracy and literacy at home? So we have done all that. Besides that, ladies and gentlemen, you know the problems you face in the school with students. I'm always briefed by my team every day. I receive a Viber message if something happened in the school, including suicide, attempted suicide, or I've received little notes saying that these students were caught with drugs, or there was a sexual abuse case, or whatever the matter was. I'm informed, I'm aware of it. Or even a road accident, I'm aware of it. Going through all those messages, it saddens me that we are raising our children in a very difficult environment, very difficult. And how do we engage with our students so that they do not fall into these traps, going into drugs or violence or any form of crime. And I have been talking to the parents as well in this area. Now, we do provide counseling. However, we also understand that we have the Child Protection Act that we all need to adhere to. But that does not mean that you cannot discipline a child. You can discipline a child. Go back to the yesteryears, where you used to make the child sit in the corner, or you had to make the child write 100 times, I will not do it again. Remember those tactics? So these are all teacher survival skills. And in a difficult situation like this, we need to bring those teacher survival skills out and use them, rather than losing our temper and smacking a child. You can be very angry. I know you can do that at home because it's your child. But this is someone else's child who is under your care. So you can't do that, and you can't do it simply because there is a legislation that gives rights to the child. But then again, we cannot sit back and say, okay, we can't discipline the child. But we have to look at other ways of doing that, and perhaps one of these days we will be organizing, I'm not saying right now, but a couple of months later, we will organize a forum on child behavior and how do we deal with this situation, and perhaps come up with a policy to guide the heads of schools, and it can be rolled out to the teachers as well. So based on what we see, we have come up with civic and moral education. And I had spoken about the curriculum review that the ministry is undertaking in the last parliament. We have talked about importance of civic education and citizenship education, so that we produce children who become adults and they are able to not only help the community, but they can help the nation. And it's important that we do this. Now, besides that, ladies and gentlemen, we are also reviewing history and social science curriculum. We are reviewing English and maths curriculum at secondary level. But there are other areas that we are also considering. One is the TVET education. TVET, we want to conduct a survey as well as a research which Fiji Higher Education Commission will do. That information will help. But we have looked at some of the good models that are around us. Various countries, which model did they choose and how did they decide that this is the best model for them, and what is the success rate in these countries. So we are doing this research as well, so that we can come up with the best model. And looking at some of the examples that we have, for example, Singapore and Finland and many other countries, they're highly successful in TVET area. They don't offer TVET like what we do in our school system, and simple reason. School system, each and every school having a TVET arm is not the best approach. It's not the best approach. We need to look at our education system in secondary schools so that we provide those subjects that can help the child to choose academic line or choose TVET line. That's what we need to do. But when they're out of year 12, that's when they go to these technical colleges. right, to pursue the course that they want to do. So that's another big work that the ministry will be undertaking. But besides that, ladies and gentlemen, you are very much aware that now we have got Teachers Helpline. This is to deal with teachers' issues, anything to do with employer-employee issues. You can reach out to the ministry through Teachers Helpline. Not like what you had to do previously, make a call at HR section, and then you're so disappointed because you spoke to 5 different people and yet you did not get the response that you wanted. No more now. So use the Teachers Helpline. We've got a dedicated person who looks after the helpline, and you will, at the end of it, you will get an answer. Whether it's possible, not possible, whatever the reasons, we'll be able to respond to you in a very professional manner. We've already rolled out and we're getting very positive review on Teachers Helpline. We've also introduced Teachers Talanoa platform, and I request the head of schools to encourage teachers to use that, because that's the place where we put the various professional development courses that are available in different countries that you can do online, or you can actually go there in person. So all that is controlled by Ministry of Civil Service, but we are pushing it out to the school system as well. So we are working in that area, and besides these two, we are also working on the third platform, which will be for the parents and students. Because do note, we have about 250,000 students, and 250,000 students times 2, mother and father, that's about 500,000. And they also need to have their say. A critical area in my view, based on the various, you can say, feedback that I'm getting currently after the prefects induction that's going on, there are some parents who are questioning how the prefects were chosen. Now, as a ministry, we never ever involved ourselves at that level, because that is really the school and for them to decide. But because these questions are coming to us, we are thinking of preparing a guideline to help in the selection of prefects and the disclosure, to maintain this transparency. Conflict of interest must be disclosed. So we will come up with that policy at a later stage. Along with that, we are very much interested in ensuring that our heads of schools are so well prepared that you truly and sincerely become the chief executive officer of that school. No longer, the same old teaching and meddling with all that. That is the work of the vice principal, the assistant principal, the heads of department. There are a lot of people who are helping you. But you need to move away and you need to focus. You need to focus on finances. You need to focus on staffing. You need to focus on relationship. You need to focus on policies. You need to focus on improving the infrastructure. So that's how we will be shifting in that direction, where you are the chief executive officer, you are working with the school management committee, and you are the person who will be advising the school management committee based on the school handbook that we have produced. So I do understand there are heads of schools who require training, and only this morning I had a meeting with one of our own, who is a professor at Monash University. We had a very good discussion today in developing such courses for the heads of schools, and how we can do a point system and how can we categorize the heads of schools. And it's going to be a competition amongst the heads of schools, and you will be paid based on your performance and so forth. But this is really at a temporary stage of our discussion. So I don't think the media should be really harping on this, because as I said, it's just a temporary, preliminary discussion at this stage. But we are thinking of how do we create those courses so that the heads of schools, they know more about finances, because we do understand that that's not your specialty, right? You're a teacher, and then gradually through your leadership qualities you became the head of schools. But now we are giving out $300,000 to some schools, or even $400,000 to some school. It's free education grant. So that requires some financial skills, some financial acumens for you to use in delivering those services. It's no point saving the money and keeping it in the account but not spending it in improving the infrastructure and so forth. So that would be an important area for us. Along with the head of schools, we will be targeting ECE and Year 1, Year 2, Year 3 teachers. Because we have found that some teachers in this lower level, they are not qualified, right? They have done some certificates, but they have not completely done the education units, or they have not been assessed in a classroom. So we need to strengthen that area so that we build a strong foundation. So ladies and gentlemen, I will stop here. I'm not going to go into other areas that I wanted to talk about, but I would rather open up the floor for Q&A. Thank you, Vinaka.